Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Only getting angrier, taking issue with Detective Comics by Tinian. Red Robin is thought dead, spoiler alert is disillusioned with crime fighting, and there have been enough tears so far to turn the Grand Canyon into a water park. Next up is a story arc titled Batwoman Begins, which I'm sure isn't just a hollow attempt to play off a popular movie title and totally relates to the events therein. Yeah.
She'll feel the pain, but she won't understand it. She'll think it's her fate, but we'll know it's me, and no.
Issue 948 begins 2 years prior, with Kate in costume guided by her dad as she swings through the city and spots Batman. I don't know if whomever scanned it did this, or if this is just how it's supposed to look as a 2-page spread. Tinian uses them so arbitrarily it's difficult to tell. Anyway, Bat spots her from a half a mile away before she loses sight of him. That was apparently the 5th night in a row she's tracked him down, and even though he disappeared each time, Jacob thinks that should count for something. But he also acknowledges that he's been at this for years compared to her few months at the time, and she should figure out what Batwoman can do that Batman can't, so the future she and her dad build would be from their methods, not the Bat's.
Pause for not-so-subtle or even clever irony.
Honestly, this scene is pretty rare for Tinian, something that feels like a genuine exchange and isn't terribly done. I'm as surprised as anyone. In the present, Kate is pulled away from not talking to her dad locked up in the Belfry to meet Batman in Monster Town, the sectioned-off area of Gotham still containing the skeletal remains of Hugo Strange's monster. Argus was supposed to haul it away, but they've apparently been held up by seagull-human corpse hybrids caused by scavenger birds eating the leftover flesh.
You know, the Justice League helped out in the cleanup after that attack. Why didn't they do anything about it? There were 2 Green Lanterns and only one would have been enough.
They meet an old acquaintance of Batman, a new character, Dr. Victoria October, Argus consultant and self-proclaimed post-human bioweaponry expert, which seems to refer to people being used as weapons in a mutagenic capacity, something claimed that Hugo Strange created with his science cocktail that made the monsters that attacked Gotham. So the Doc is claiming expertise in something that is allegedly new, especially to the people running Argus? It's not like it's something we haven't seen before. Sometimes the means are mechanical, other times it's biological, but all in all, when you think more about it, it doesn't sound all that different from what we've seen from Clayface, Poison Ivy, or a number of other characters, other than whether it's intended or not.
Are we only specifying kaiju-related examples, or is this another case of DC not knowing its own continuity? Again.
The giant monster corpse is apparently very tricky to dispose of, and its blood has the purest strain of the mutagenic toxin, hence why the scavenger birds are mutating. Unfortunately, an agent of Jacob Kane's colony made off with enough of the goop to create a dozen monsters. At the Belfry, the Bats interrupt Jacob Kane's extraction by that same agent, Colony Prime, claiming to have studied them enough to counter their move. So to prove it, he fires a metal stick into the computer, making its security systems target Kate and Bruce. How impressive. Number 949 starts with another flashback, Kate analyzing and trying to pinpoint Bat's fighting style when the genuine article pops in and asks who she's working for. After a brief fight that gets Batman shot in the leg, she confesses to trying to understand him, why he does what he does, figure things out about herself, and even asks for some pointers. Bats doesn't approve of what he sees and threatens to shut her down if she gets in his way, which fails to dissuade her. The encounter was secretly watched by Jacob and a Simon Samuels, who doesn't think Kate has the right discipline for the colony, and the Caped Crusader's voice in her head probably won't help. In the present, Simon, now Colony Prime, has successfully overridden the Belfry's technological immune system to bind the Bats at their ankles and leaves them to die, all the while berating Kate for no longer being a soldier.
Because, of course, all soldiers love violence and death and nothing else. Complex personality, what's that?
Simon makes his way through the base by basically shooting door panels until the doors open, because that's always how it works, right? And it's worth noting that Jacob told him to leave, but he disobeyed. He encounters Batman, they tussle, and he manages to stab the Dark Knight in the ribcage, because as he again brags, he watched footage of him. He's about to free his CO, but it turns out he's actually in the mudroom. Because despite this being an extraction mission, him being the best, and them having a hacker that knows about the Belfry, he somehow just traipsed right into their training area. How is the colony a threat again? Batwoman and a collection of doppelgangers attack Samuels before they disappear. Like holograms instead of mud. Anyway, while giving him the beatdown, she claps back at his earlier remarks and says she's better than he is.
Yeah, random, boring, one-note jerk character created specifically for this story with no lasting impact that readers will soon forget about. She's better than you, and that's a really high bar, maybe, I guess.
Unable to get past her and Batman, Simon tells Jacob that the many arms of death have a new weapon, and the colony is losing the Eastern Front, then proceeds to inject himself with the monster formula. He changes into whatever that is and shrugs off several shotgun blasts before escaping. Kate monologues about how shortly after her first face-to-face with Batman 2 years back, her cousin Bruce spontaneously called her over for lunch. She noticed a slight limp in his leg, the same one where she shot Batman, and deduced his alter ego. Unless the ever-paranoid Dark Knight wanted her to find out, I don't know why he would just invite her over so quickly. Sounds really convenient. But anyway, he wants to end crime, she wants to end war, and those separate paths will prevent her from being consumed by his mission. This is apparently the motivation she needed to talk to her dad, who's actually glad that smug tool Samuels got his armor plating handed to him. Despite being locked up during the Night of the Monster Men, Jacob seems very aware of the formula and how it's already being sold on the black market. Man, that's quick. All the more reason the Justice League should have taken care of the remains. He asks if she's ready to fight a war bigger than she can imagine, and instead of being released, the Colonel will tell Kate whatever she wants, from colony info to where to find bioweapons dealers, if they talk without her mask on. And she agrees.
Given how often Tinian has other characters do it, I'm surprised he hasn't found an excuse to have her dramatically rip it off 3 times already. So, Batwoman Begins was alright.
I've never really had strong feelings about Kate Kane one way or another, and this story doesn't change that. It doesn't seem distinctly more impressive or amazing than other characters, but she wasn't infuriating and didn't seem dumbed down, like what Tinian has done with so many others. Maybe because he didn't personally reinvent her. It was short, had an enemy that barely proved a threat in the end despite his own boasts, though Kate was pretty boastful herself, talking about how awesome she is. Going back to that joke I made earlier, I guess there was an element of beginning to it, mostly because of the flashbacks to when she was starting out, but that kind of feels like Tinian thought of the title before the plot. I've read worse by him, to be sure, and that's about the nicest thing I can say.
I'm not counting on that being consistent. The next story is League of Shadows. Something else taken right out of a certain Christopher Nolan movie, if I recall correctly.
Number 950 is a prologue and an anniversary issue, so it has more pages. And a pretty cool alternate cover, I gotta say. We begin with a young woman named Christine Montclair as she goes to the Gotham Metropolitan Ballet Hall, to which she's devoted her life, according to narration. It's also mentioned she doesn't believe in ghosts, like the one that some of the dancers have claimed has been watching them at night. She begins practicing a routine, only to very quickly see Orphan mimicking her movements. A startled Christine falls back and screams, to which Orphan pleads, "No!" but ultimately smoke bombs away.
You know who would have gone unseen while watching the ballet, and had the ability to read and anticipate body language to avoid scaring someone? And just not be this sloppy at all? Cassandra Cain. Unfortunately, she hasn't been seen since 2011. Well, there was that brief appearance in Convergence, but that's about it.
She goes to Harper Rowe's apartment, trying to explain how she was spotted. And I have to call bull on something. Aside from the melodramatic narration typical of Tinian, this line of feeling the love behind Harper's words? Yeah, no.
Why would you make up a lie like that?
Harper has mostly been shown to be a self-involved narcissist. She has no love for anyone but herself, only mild affection for those who obey her. Stating there's love doesn't mean it's there, no matter how much bad writing wants you to believe it. Theirs has always been an empty friendship that adds nothing. Narration even gets more painfully dramatic, as Cassino is envious of how Rowe bleeds emotion.
That was sappy, manipulative drivel.
Sweet mercy, this is stupid. Instead of elaborating, she just leaves.
Oh, I can tell the manipulative idiocy is just getting started.
Narration summarizes her current and terrible origin, noting one of the ghosts she sees is that of a Cassandra Cain that was never allowed to exist, but fails to mention that was because of people like Dan Didio and James Tynion IV. Jeez, I want to punch someone right now. She follows the bat signal where Batman meets with Jim Gordon and surprise guest, Mayor Haiti. This guy seems perfectly suited for this writer because he just rambles on, talking a lot without saying much at all, before claiming he wants to leave a better legacy for Gotham, which includes working alongside Batman. Jim pulls a gun, reacting to something he saw in the shadows, but nothing's there. A 2-page spread sees Orphan knock around some kidnappers, Tynion's narration trying to be all poetic about her fascination with ballet and art, but only able to copy others' moves, all of which manages to not be interesting at all. She applies ballet moves in her attacks to change the nature of the fight, a message hidden in the brutality, but it goes unheard.
That's because other people don't read body language, especially if they're too busy trying to shoot you. I know what Tynion is going for here, but the way he's going about it is very, very dumb. His cheap replica is dumb. Cassandra Cain was never dumb.
Batman, who'd been after this human trafficking ring for a while now, arrives to take down the last goon who is threatening his victims, and the kids are soon secured. But I guess because Orphan posed like she was going to attack or something, I don't know, Bats tells her she needs to learn her own strength and know when to stop. The Tynion narration says she totally knows when to stop because she has to hold back, needing to focus all her might to use non-lethal force because she notices the vulnerable spots on everyone she sees and wonders if seeing how she can kill them is the same thing as wanting to kill them.
No, that's dumb.
Not satisfying.
Cassandra Cain, when she was introduced, was all too aware of her own strength. Her unique abilities informed her when to stop. She had it under control, and she wasn't afraid of it. Remember that.
Then we get this rubbish about Batman's voice being wary to say the name she chose because her dad died to help her. No, he mostly killed his boss out of spite. Casino was an afterthought. But that was enough to pay tribute to David Cain, perhaps the deadliest assassin on the planet.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Are you kidding me? A guy who could only kill small children most of the time. The guy who couldn't kill Harper Row when she was battered and beaten on a bathroom floor, dead to rights. This is what Tynion does. He tells you something he can't back up visually, and this time it sounds like he's patting himself on the back for something he didn't achieve with another lousy reinvention.
This David Cain would qualify as a deadly assassin, but Tynion never wrote that character. In the Belfry, Luke is giving Clayface a wristband version of the gauntlet that lets him become Basil Karlo. But the limitations remain. He has to keep the shapeshifting to a minimum because what little human DNA is left is strained by it. Headaches are mentioned, but that never goes anywhere. Keeping the band on for longer than 12 hours would burn up his remaining DNA, and possibly lead to permanent damage. As it is, his clay form whittles morality away from his brain. Luke says there's still hope, but Basil is unconvinced. Orphan, watching from the shadows, reminisces of days before Red Robin's fake death and spoiler alert leaving, when she would laugh with them. Something we never saw, but take the word of bad writing anyway. Narration claims that Casino can sympathize with Clayface, becoming something you don't want to be, and she wants to learn from Batwoman, a trained weapon too, but one who wields herself with discipline and honor.
No.
James Tynion IV never actually read Cassandra Cain, did he? I'm growing more convinced he'd never heard of the character before being inexplicably hired at DC Comics. He told a fan at a convention once that he genuinely thought he was writing No Man's Land era Cassie here, but no, not so much. I guess there weren't enough crocodile tears in the good version for him.
Orphan returns to the ballet hall, where Christine is talking to the police about their earlier encounter. It was some kind of dangerous thing, all in black. I could swear it wanted to hurt me. It was trying to dance with me. I don't know, maybe it wanted to taunt me before it attacked.
The dangerous thing that was clearly a person with her hands up saying no wanted to hurt you? Dancing to taunt you before an attack? Then why was there no attack? No one else was there. Why did the dangerous thing leave? Why is this so blasted stupid?
You are a fistful of stupidity.
Cassino goes to her apartment and puts all the words she wants to say in the form of interpretive dance, which of course needs Tinian's narration, because how else can you understand what she's doing or what you're demanded to feel if he doesn't explicitly tell you? This is watched from several blocks away by Shiva, concluding the main story. It's followed by Higher Powers, starting off with Azrael in a church, finishing a prayer just before Batwing shows up, followed by a giant vigilante hunting robot. It's a program that both Luke and Batman have struggled with in the mudroom, but Jean-Paul deftly beats it. His secret was humbling himself before and accepting a higher power, which is why he was praying before the fight. Pretty sure his fiery blades had a part in it, though. That and the Suit of Sorrows, his armor that Luke scans, finding the tech impossible. It's an AI that interfaces with Jean-Paul's nervous system, telling him where to best attack, and if not for how he was engineered, he'd have been driven insane. But he had a revelation when discovering his life had been a lie, the Order of Saint-Dumas more monstrous than divine, and that truth ultimately humbled him. His faith was about surrendering to the mystery, not mastering it, which apparently both JP and the Suit accepted in order to work. Luke's never been one for religious takes on moral absolutes, and wonders if the AI is just playing on Valley's beliefs for its own ends. It's a concern for Az, but apparently not enough to get him to stop using it. They leave to give the Not Sentinel program another go, as Luke wonders why the Order never tried building a body for the program. At which point we go to a secret location where a mechanical body, Ascalon, is activated. But I'm sure it's unrelated.
Just bear in mind, not every church is going to be quick to jump on the robot train.
Not games, have questions, need answers.
Fine, then come to confess it yourself. Don't send a machine.
The next story, The Big Picture, is set months back as Red Robin pulls up in the Redbird, an actual car Tim had for a while in the 90s, picking up Batman for a chat. Glossing over how something bit Bruce on the shoulder. Oh, and Tim gave Alfred the night off when Batman had called for him, so that sounds like a smart move when he was calling for help. They go to the Robin's Nest, where their conversation is secure. Drake noticed how the other Robins, Grayson, Jason, and Damian, have been situated in a way that they can be eyes and ears for the Dark Knight, where he'd usually have no access. To be blunt, Tim asks why Batman is preparing for war, and that's the story. Really.
Well, that was a couple pages of exposition and filler. Didn't seem to really add much of anything, and if it was alluding to a future story, it didn't exactly excite me. Higher Powers was fine. I'm okay with some of the kinder religious notations, but I wasn't feeling this new Jean-Paul Valley.
I'm not all hung up on the original version, but this new take doesn't feel interesting to me. It could be, but it just feels bland. Maybe because I'm not sure their spiritual remarks come from an informed context or authentic place, seem more generic cookie-cutter to me. Now, the main story with Cassino, not good. I know that's not going to go over well with some because of all the pros telling us how isolated and sad Orphan is, but that's kind of the problem. Constant dialogue or narration to say how things are established rather than consistently showing them established. I don't believe this character ever laughed with friends or sympathizes with Clayface because it hasn't been sufficiently shown. I don't believe she sees Batwoman as the same as her because previous issues don't support that. It just feels like random praise for Kate. I don't believe Harper loves her because, well, Harper only loves herself. Seriously, why would anyone associate with this mess? As to the claim that this is the same Cassandra Cain as before, no it isn't. Cass was never afraid to socialize, she just often chose not to, and when she did, it was willingly. There were some awkward learning curves she had to navigate, because that's how you develop a character! Something Tinian isn't doing because I don't think he can. Stop forcing people to feel sad just so they'll mistake that for good writing. It's all a distraction from his shortcomings and bad ideas. Easier than improving one's storytelling skills, I suppose.
They tug at the heart and fog the mind.
Oh, but I'm sure if he creates more half-hearted excuses to make Casino cry, it'll totally change everything. More exposition, more statements that aren't backed up, more lazy tactics.
951, Part 1 of League of Shadows, opens 3 months ago, with Shiva torturing the captain of a 30-troop squad of colony agents. She says she's merciless and cannot be appealed to, threatens that all their deaths will be slow and painful until they die of natural causes. Yeah, all those swords and blood leaking out of them, totally natural. Geez, even when the exposition is warranted, it manages to be stupid. Anyway, the guy admits that they had to move on her now because Batman took their leader and keeps blocking them from Gotham. Highly trained soldiers that are constantly lauded as being so good because they study Batman, fought his crew, try to re-enter the city, and it's so effortless to stop them, we don't need to see it. Oh, what a menace the colony is. This apparently changes everything, so she cuts the guy's throat, one of Tinian's favorite staples, and tells an underling the League of Shadows moves tonight.
We had best have enough bubble wrap for my porcelain clown collection, or it will be the end of you all. And make sure you label things correctly this time. I don't want to find the TV remote in with your dress shirts again. Now, to the U-Haul station.
While watching the team fight a bunch of kung fu cobblepots, Batwoman chats with Batman, who's out on patrol. The city's been quiet, save for some muggers taken care of by police, attributed to Bats working with the mayor to root out corruption. You know, that thing that was talked about in the previous issue, and apparently not crucial enough for us to see, but apparently so effective that Gotham's crime rate has plummeted like a penny down a wishing well. Kate mentions that Orphan has been spending a lot of time in the mudroom, increasing the difficulty, and Kate's concerned that she doesn't get a lot of human contact since Stephanie left.
Wow, Tinian just loves lavishing compliments on the his terrible versions of characters he reinvented. He might think that he's paying homage or respecting the iterations he says he grew up reading, but it reads a lot more like he's complimenting himself for what little effort he puts into his work. Furthermore, they hardly ever showed Casino interacting socially with Spoiler Alert, so again, Tinian is writing the coattails of their pre-reboot friendship, established by other writers, while insisting that never happened, which only exposes Tinian's weaknesses as a writer. He changed characters to fit his limited skills and pretends it's all the same, but I'm not buying into the lie.
And no one really seems to point out the very fatal-looking attacks on the Oswalds here. Yes, they're not real, but the whole point of training is to hone their skills, and dealing deadly strikes seems to ignore that whole afraid-of-our-own-skills shtick from the prologue. Consistency, who needs it? Anyway, Batman admits that if he had to fight Orphan for real, he'd lose. Not that we've ever seen them so much as spar, but hey, it was in the previous continuity, and we have to pretend this is just as good. Gah. And he says that they should take her to the ballet for the sake of her civilian identity. For now, he needs to see Haiti about some promised evidence to put away some corrupt judges. Only he finds the mayor stuck to the wall with swords in a crucifixion pose.
You just know that when word of this gets out, someone's first comment will be complaining that there needs to be a separation of church and state. I'm not saying they'd have a point, I'm saying it's what they'd say.
Haiti utters his last words that the League of Shadows did this, just as police bust in and jump to the wrong conclusions.
Because sticking people to walls with multiple swords speaks to who Batman is, after all.
But to be fair to the cops, the hilts are shaped like bats. He takes his leave and a bullet to the shoulder as the cops report him as a murderer, and he barely sees a shadowed figure before it disappears. He talks with Jacob Kane later, who lays out how the League of Shadows operate. They don't attack directly, and they don't take credit for their actions. They make deliberate moves to result in the most destruction, then get away clean. Killing the mayor was so overt, it must mean that whatever the colony was trying to stop is about to happen. Batman thinks he's trying to justify 300 counts of attempted murder. Well, actually, it was 600 before collateral damage. But Jacob tells him to expect even more death. Their best option is to take the suspect list they got from the colony's database and find those who don't exist, so that when the worst possible thing that could happen to Gotham finally happens, he'll know the difference between an innocent and a shadow. When Bruce walks off, Jacob tells Kate to get him to understand, and he wants his daughter to survive. The news reports on Hades' assassination, impaled by 6 swords. Yeah, more like 14.
Either this is a continuity error or someone swiped some of those blades. Man, that's going to be one awkward and creepy eBay auction.
The anchors then begin laughing and fall over dead, victims of Joker toxin. Feels kind of reminiscent of the first Batman movie, or maybe someone wanted to reinvent Jim Ankerton and Jill Newslady. The team is watching 20 minutes after the fact, and reports are coming in that more gas is rising from the sewers in Adams Square Park, leading to violence. Before they move out, Bruce clarifies that the League of Shadows, a group designed to be a conspiracy theory, is too easy an idea to exist, isn't provable, and at best someone was inspired by the myth started by Ra's al Ghul. Though with some coaxing by Kate, he gradually laments he could be wrong.
Now, how could that be? They've gone into such great detail of Batman, the world's greatest detective, investigating the stories, debunking suspicion, clearing the names of, oh wait, that's right, he never did any of that, he never said he even looked into it.
They arrive at the park to subdue the cackling citizens, but Orphan senses something wrong, and says that they're all pretending. This causes the horde to stop moving, until their eyes go black and reveal swords, size... Where were they hiding those halberds?
Let me pause for a little sidebar. Years ago, I had my own idea for a comic with original characters that were, shall we say, pastiches of certain ones I felt DC had screwed up horrifically. At one point, I had 2 people, antagonists, assassins actually, meet up in a Parisian cafe. Now, why am I bringing this up?
Because Detective Comics number 952 opens many months ago with Ra's al Ghul talking with Shiva at a cafe in Paris, France. Now, short of Tinian hacking my computer, I don't think he could have ripped me off, so this is likely a coincidence, but not one that I find particularly inspiring. Anyway, Ra's found his League of Assassins dead because Shiva considered his followers children? Does that make it better? Since when did a demon's head have lax standards in his minions? Or is this just a different way for Tinian to integrate another favorite staple of his, dead kids? He offers to end hostilities before they escalate by offering the location of Shiva's daughter, but she turns him down, and that's when some colony goons burst onto the scene. It was strangely vacant for some reason. It takes 10 seconds for Shiva to kill them all, which... yeah, she was always skilled, but this feels like such a stretch. And she sees a picture of an unmasked orphan from the folder, naturally looking sad because Tinian doesn't know any other emotion. In the present day, the team gets overwhelmed by the shadows, and Batwing and Azrael get stabbed. So Bats has Clayface split into multiple combatants, since he doesn't bleed and knows Kung Fu. After, months, because martial arts are just that easy to master, right?
Maybe he's just being boastful in the heat of the moment, but since this writer just establishes important or developmental details and throwaway dialogue all the time, how can we be sure?